Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Nice to see you here. It's a beautiful weather outside. Luckily, we have all the windows closed, so we don't get tempted. We have a busy schedule ahead of us today. Our first speaker is from the Netherlands, Dr. Sebastian Rijn, who is the Director for Policy, Development, Strategy and Innovation at the Ministry of Defense of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. He's said to be the key figure behind all strategy developments in MOD. I got background information. And among other things, he was responsible for the renewal of the defense cyber strategy earlier this year. And this strategy and its effective implementation will be the focus of Dr. Rijn's presentation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here and to speak to you on this second day of our deliberations. You probably know that the Dutch are active supporters of NATO's cooperative cyber defense center here in a Center of Excellence here in Tallinn, and there are quite a few of us here, and I think we were going to do the wave. Is that right? There they are. Many colleagues here. Personally, as a policymaker, and you refer to that as well as the cyber director for the Dutch intelligence services in recent years, I've come to regard the digital domain as the most fascinating, challenging, complex, and significant area for military innovation. And I am therefore putting much store into further developing our cyber strategy, and I am ready to learn today as much as I can from you at this conference. Now, there are, of course, many issues that we can discuss, that I could discuss, but I've chosen to bring the following question to the fore. How can we ensure an effective implementation of our cyber strategies within our respective organizations? And how can we create the conditions for success in the digital age? Now, the first thing we need to do, of course, is to acknowledge that we are revolutionaries. The digital information revolution may well be the most important development in mankind since the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, changing the way we live our lives, connect, organize our societies, do business, wage war. We also need to recognize that we are in the early stages of this revolution and that we do not know precisely where it will take us. What we do know is that this new world on the right side of this hemisphere is already looking quite different and much more complex than the old world on the left. Of course, this new world is already familiar terrain to many of you. Yet it remains worthwhile to take a step back every now and then and consider the significance of the change that is unfolding. In less than a decade, mobile devices for digital communication have flooded the world. The mobility of the users of telecommunications and the number and diversity of these mobile devices has increased drastically. Of course, you know that there are already more mobile devices than humans. Importantly, from a Ministry of Defense perspective, the growth in the coming years will take place in the belt of instability to the south and southeast of Europe. Social media, too, have become part and parcel of everyday life across the globe at dizzying speed. Nowadays, we send 182 billion emails on average every day. Next, the quantity and diversity of data has grown exponentially over the past decade. 90% of all data worldwide is created in the last 2 years. 2.5 trillion, a one with 18 zeros, bytes of data are being produced every day. And we talk not only of big data, we also talk of fast data. Any data caused by an event, activity, or interaction via social or online channels, mobile devices, sensors, point of sale, Internet of Everything. Fast data are volatile, have a limited shelf life, and lend themselves to supporting current decisions and actions here and now, so that individuals and organizations can make timely adjustments and decisions. Lastly, the complexity and density of communication networks has rapidly increased. Within the global telecommunications network, traffic is routed in accordance with mostly economic factors in relation to transportation costs. One moment, traffic is routed through the air, the next moment via cable. So a very complex picture. From a defense perspective, how in the world do we ensure that in the ocean of data we can identify the threat or an attacker? How can we ensure the security of our systems and supply chains? I'm not going to tell you that the digital information revolution already deeply affects the military domain, because you already know that. And perhaps you're in one of these pictures. And for some years, now the digital domain, cyberspace, is being regarded within NATO, the alliance, as the fifth domain for military action. The digital information revolution provides opportunities to fundamentally enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of our military operations, but at the same time presents risks that cannot be ignored. This, of course, is accepted wisdom, so I don't need to dwell on it. What I do want to talk to you about is the thinking behind our defense cyber strategy, and hopefully to address some themes that might be of interest to you as well. Now, the Dutch like to think of themselves as being in the digital forefront, of course, after Estonia. Dutch society is internet savvy. The Netherlands is one of the data hubs of the world, and we have a fairly well-developed national cybersecurity strategy. This ambition of being ahead of the game is reflected in our defense cyber strategy, which was first formulated in 2012. It is important to note that we have continued to invest in cyber in the past couple of years, despite severe budget cuts. And the Dutch government added money this year too to the budget for cyber purposes. It is also important to note that we do not have a cyber defense strategy, but a defense cyber strategy. We look at cyber as an integral part of military operations in the digital era. In our strategy, the defense, intelligence, and offensive strands of cyber are interlocking. To stay ahead of the game and to cope with digital threats to our operations, our systems, and our information, we are eager to learn. And therefore, we aim to pool resources and deepen our collaboration with our partners in the years to come. Over the past couple of years, 2 years, since the formulation of our strategy, we have made some important strides. The expansion of our Defense Computer Emergency Response Team, the setting up of a joint SIG and cyber unit in conjunction with the General Intelligence Service, the two services, and the establishment of the Defense Cyber Command in 2014, the establishment of a Security Operations Center monitoring the security of our systems. In sum, we've laid the foundations for the Dutch defense organization to operate and act in the digital domain. So are we there yet? No, of course not. We are now focusing our efforts on ensuring the effective implementation of our strategy, in addition to strengthening our capabilities. This means we place emphasis on creating the conditions for success in the digital age. We therefore look into our personnel policies, acquisition and innovation processes, partnerships, knowledge base, awareness level, and legal framework. The aim of the recently published update of our strategy, which is available to you on the, I believe on the website, is therefore not only to give direction to the further development and investment in capabilities, cyber capabilities, but it is also to create the right conditions for the organization to function in the digital age. So I would like to address some of the themes that concern these conditions. First of all, attracting, retaining, and developing cyber professionals is clearly our #1 priority. As Albert Hubbard said, one machine can do the work of 50 ordinary people, but no machine can do the work of one extraordinary man, at least not yet. Smart, skillful, and motivated cyber professionals are the most important capabilities one must have at one's disposal in the digital domain. This is because in-depth knowledge of this domain is indispensable to ensure the success of operations, and this knowledge is to be found in people. We at the Ministry, but I think this is true for others as well, have to put a great deal of effort into attracting and retaining sufficient people with specific knowledge. Given the shortages on our labor market, competitive recruitment and flexibility will be necessary. Coordination of our personnel policy for cyber professionals with public and private partners is also important. Most of all, defense organizations, we think, will have to rely on the unique significance of their work and the sense of purpose that employees can derive from it. This, I emphasize, is our main selling point. But we also will have to apply flexible personnel policies in order to be attractive. Limitations arising from military personnel placement policy, such as limited placement duration, job assignments, and the ranking system, must be avoided. It also helps to put cyber firmly on the map as a defense-wide discipline, promoting the development of career patterns and the exchange of personnel between MOD divisions. Finally, we will further expand the number of cyber reservists, people from outside the organization, but with closely connected to our defense organization in the years to come. Second, we need to make room for small innovation as opposed to big innovation. This is another way of saying, think big, act small. At Ministries of Defense, we are accustomed to developing multi-year plans, making large investments, and work toward a capability down the line. The development of production of weapon systems usually takes years. This simply does not work in the digital domain, with its extremely short innovation cycle, taking only months rather than years. The development of digital technology also tends to be difficult to predict. We need flexible, simpler procurement processes. And we also need to build up a development capability. In order to meet an operational need, it is often necessary to be able to develop digital tools ourselves, using the technology that can be obtained on the market. The targeted development of digital tools for use within military operations requires a smart development capability supported by a concept development and experimentation environment. Unfortunately, traditional large-scale change efforts that challenge the core of the organization often fail. Change management is not rational. It's intensely political. We therefore need to focus on allowing change to happen at the edges of our organization. Give power to the edge. Give it attention and protection. Give it money, but make sure it stays at the edge. As General Breedlove Secure said recently at a conference in the Netherlands, flourish where you are planted. Over time, the success at the so-called edges of our organization can even transform the core of our organization. Thirdly, we need to make the most of our partnerships and build a strong and vibrant ecosystem for our defense cyber effort. Because of the scarcity of knowledge and high degree of interconnectedness, the potential and the security of the Dutch MOD in the digital domain is determined to a significant degree by the cyber resilience of partners and their knowledge. Intense collaboration between public and private partners is essential to strengthen national cyber resilience. This is another hallmark of our approach. Agreements on mutual support and military assistance in the cyber domain are already in place with our National Cybersecurity Center, which acts as the national coordinator. And we are also engaged in joint crisis management exercises with civil authorities. In addition, the security of our military systems and information depends to a large degree on the reliability of our digital supply chain. And we are taking measures to ensure that reliability. And the business community is, of course, a vital partner because it is in the driving seat of innovation in the digital domain. Joint research programs, development of capabilities, and collaboration on education and training are high on the agenda. Internationally, we seek to deepen the collaboration with like-minded countries and strengthen the important supporting role for NATO, for instance by drafting security standards for member states, promoting interoperability, and improved information and knowledge sharing, like today. And the partnership between NATO and the business community, in the context of the NATO industrial cyber partnership, is also important from our point of view. Fourthly, we need to acknowledge that we are still very much in the learning mode. Our understanding of the digital domain is still flawed. Our experience is short. We must therefore continue to invest in deepening our cyber knowledge base, both within our organizations and outside. At the same time, we must broaden the access to knowledge and enhance cyber awareness across the organization. Cyber awareness is something that should not be kept at the edge. Our education and learning programs must be adjusted so that cyber knowledge becomes embedded throughout the organization. In the Netherlands, the Defense Cyber Command will initiate, therefore, and facilitate education and training of relevance to all levels of the organization, ranging from basic cyber awareness to highly specialized expertise areas. And the MOD's Security Authority has developed a digital driving license for all our personnel, a much-needed cyber awareness training for defense employees. Education and training will also increasingly focus on the possibilities that cyber capabilities offer for the execution of defense tasks, for the execution, therefore. Cyber operations will be placing an increasingly prominent role in the design, planning, and execution of exercises and operations. MOD employees and military units will also train to operate in conditions in which they are temporarily denied the full functionality of networks and systems. Finally, the Dutch Defense Organization will invest in the training of all IT employees to enable them to detect cyber attacks faster and to take the right measures. The importance of cyber awareness is not limited to the Dutch Defense Organization, but extends to its national and international partners. We therefore join forces with our civilian partners in alert online campaigns, and the Dutch Minister of Defense, together with her colleagues from Estonia, Latvia, Austria, Lithuania, have recently signed the Cyber Hygiene Initiative. This initiative aims to strengthen cybersecurity culture. Lastly, and I believe in yesterday's discussion this was also mentioned, we need to upgrade and update, but also upgrade our national legal framework. More specifically, the law that regulates, in the Netherlands at least, regulates the work of the Dutch intelligence services. The current law predates, written in 2002, predates the digital information revolution and prohibits the interception of communications on cable, simply because the law was written in 2002, only 15 years ago, when most communications still traveled through the atmosphere. In this particular area, I regret the Netherlands is not ahead of the game. So therefore, the Dutch government recently submitted a proposal to Parliament to change the law to the effect that our intelligence services are allowed to intercept communications on cable. This change, too, is of great importance for the effective implementation of our defense cyber strategy. Logical though this update may seem, this is of course a sensitive issue as it concerns the balance to be struck between privacy and security. But we are well positioned for this debate. This is no black or white story. Our national cybersecurity strategy puts the balance between security, freedom, and social and economic benefits at the core of its thinking. The balance between these three aspects, security, freedom, social, economic aspects, is a dynamic one, intended to be realized in a constantly open and pragmatic dialogue between all stakeholders, both national and international. In conclusion, our strategies will not be effective if we do not anticipate, or at least try to fathom, the implications of further technological development. By this, I do not only mean the further development of the digital information technology, but also the convergence of diverse technological and scientific developments with, yet again, revolutionary implications. With the development of artificial intelligence, fueled by Moore's law on the exponential growth of computing power, we might eventually even be facing the philosophical question, what still distinguishes a man from a machine? Now, we are not there yet, but let's start thinking about the implications for the military of machines, computers, robots, and the like, that are more intelligent than humans, or maybe even human mankind. The so-called singularity idea out of the United States is one expression of this, and it's worth to explore its potential significance. But that, I hasten to add, is for other speakers at this conference. I understand later today there's one session that addresses this issue. I would like to focus on getting our current strategy to work. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation and for sharing the vision and the experience of the Netherlands. We have now time for questions. Yes, here.
Good morning, sir.
Good
you
morning.
said that you are considering updating the legal framework on intercepting data from cable. What is the opinion of the Dutch society about that?
Well, there's no such thing as Dutch society. But there are many Dutch people with opinions. I don't know. I think Dutch society in general understands, in particular in this new security context, that we need to enhance the security of our digital domain, and also that cyber is part and parcel of military operations. Political support for our defense cyber strategy in Parliament, support in Parliament, has been very strong and very broad. Most parties, I think with no exception, I think all parties strongly support the cyber effort of the armed forces in the cyber domain. The issue of cable is more sensitive, obviously, and there's a lively debate on the balance between privacy and security, or as we analyzed it in the Netherlands, between freedom of the internet, the social and economic aspects of the internet, and the security of the internet. So there's a lively debate about it, but I think we've come a long way in this debate, and the government has secured support, political support, in Parliament for the proposal that it did to revise the law. There will be more debate because we will soon be offering up the change law, the new law for internet consultation. This is a requirement in the Netherlands that all laws undergo internet consultation, and everyone can respond to the new law. So I do anticipate that in the course of this year, maybe next year as well, we will once again see a lively debate. But I think overall, with all the guarantees that we built into our system, I think we will see a new law that does what we think needs to be done, give access to cable to our intelligence services with certain provisions.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? Please state your name and affiliation.
Yes, good morning. My name is Gabriel Jacobs, and I am from a company US called Alta Systems. My question is, we know that in recent years, the cyber attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated, like self-organizing botnets and so on. So my question is, how much Dutch people or Dutch society or your defense agency is spending on fundamental research on cybersecurity versus training people in civil and military people?
Yeah, we are doing both. We're investing in fundamental research, in particular at our research institutes, defense research institutes, but also making use of knowledge in the private sector to understand the fundamental nature of the threat, and doing the education and the training of our personnel. So if you ask me how much are we doing, we are joining, for instance, we are joining effort with our civilian partners in fueling innovation and also fueling research and development in the cybersecurity domain. Every year we put up money and we ask anyone basically to come forth with proposals, specific proposals on cybersecurity related issues. And these proposals are then assessed by a multidisciplinary team and either approved or disapproved. And when approved, an organization, usually a university or a research organization, can then engage in this type of research. So we're doing various things to enhance our research and development effort in this area.
Thank you. And time for one last quick question here in the front row. Up here.
Sir, Jim Martin from the United States Naval Academy. You talked a little bit earlier about how your Netherlands created the policy about how they're going to reconcile the tough decisions you have to make between intercepting messages, but also preserving the freedoms and the liberties of the people. Could you elaborate a little bit how the policy that was put out addresses those problems? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Well, basically, it's become a very elaborate system of guarantees, which I think first thing that can be said about this, that anything that the intelligence services do in terms of interception, including bulk interception on cable, needs to be approved at the political level. So the Minister of Defense or the Minister of the Interior will need to approve the interception. Of course, we have also the Oversight Committee, which is being strengthened for this particular purpose, which will be strengthened for this particular purpose, which has unfettered access to all information at the intelligence services. And they put out regular reports, which are partially open, the public reports, partially secret, but they will always be shared with Parliament. So therefore, Parliament, too, has the ability to control government in this respect. So there are basically three layers. So first, the political level within the government needs to approve. The intelligence services themselves cannot act on their own. Second, there's the oversight, professional oversight, strengthened oversight. And third, we do communicate with Parliament, and the Oversight Committee also communicates with Parliament, and Parliament can intervene. So I think it's a very regulated and well thought through and much discussed system of guarantees for freedom and privacy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan, for your excellent presentation, a token of appreciation.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
attack sometime during the sustained period of your previous attack so that you have continuous revenue rather than one time made a lot of money and then went out of business. But besides that, this also tells us something about sort of the QA, the quality assurance budget. Because that A line, the steepness of that line and the length of that line are the only things that are under the control of an innovator. The decay, sustain, and release are all in the hands of your competitors, either your current competitors or the ones you inspire by building something new. And what that means is that it is the smart business thing to do is to get your product out there as soon as possible with the maximum number of features that you can find a way to get out there. And that's where that Saturn car came from. That's where the TCP failure came from. This is happening at scale. This, as I said, it's not, there's no such thing as a perfect model, but this model does approximate the stories that venture capitalists in Palo Alto, California are going to be hearing today and tomorrow and every day thereafter. So this is why I call this a race to the bottom. Now you can do some things about this. Certainly in this audience, you know how practical or impractical each of these suggestions is going to be. Turns out not very practical. But there are nation-state attackers that use those sorts of problems in our infrastructure in order to attack us or in order to steal or get some strategic advantage by violating privacy or what have you. You know, the estimate is that we're into the many hundreds of billions, hundreds of billions of euros per year of wealth that are being transferred from modern digitized countries into less modern sort of old Soviet bloc countries or you know, the oppressive regimes here and there in the world, all by exercising flaws in our digital infrastructure. And we'd like that to stop because those hundreds of billions of euros represent a logistics advantage to our adversaries. And so we would very much like to do something about it. So in case you thought I was only talking about commercial problems, this has some real strategic national security implications. So it strikes me that some countries may have earned the fire axe through some wet cable that would otherwise put them online until they're ready to behave a little better. I would very much like to increase the compliance burden for device manufacturers. It should be the case that before you can deliver device technology into the self-driving car arena, for example, that you've shown that if somebody can get somehow onto the communications bus of your vehicle, they won't be able to suddenly spin the wheel rapidly to the left or otherwise kill you or kill a pedestrian or whatever. In other words, I'd like to see some red teaming, and I'd like to see an international standards organization of some kind. Could be ISO, could be Underwriters Laboratory. I don't care who it is, but I'd like to see some kind of a base standard before human life safety can be put in the hands of technology that is part of a race to the bottom, please. And we could also increase the compliance burden on ISPs. I've been talking to some folks at the Securities and Exchange Commission to find out if possibly source address validation could become a checklist item for auditors for public companies, and they would have to disclose whether or not they practiced source address validation on their networks and whether they required their vendors to do so. Because this is a rising tide that could flood all shores. This is a global problem that nobody is worrying about. And we're going to have to find some indirect ways to solve it because there is no individually rational incentive for solving it because, as I explained earlier, you just make life better for your competitors. So in the military world, World War II would be a great example of how kinetic weapons deployed along visible borders in a declared war with defined objectives, concentrated capital, and economies fighting economies by basically saying, I believe that we can build a better logistics supply line for our army than you can for yours. Right? The best logistics won. And that's certainly what you will read in Sun Tzu, for example, The Art of War. This is not a war in the same sense the Cold War, the war on drugs, and the war on terror are not wars, even though the civilian leadership likes to call them wars. And in cyber war, we don't declare it. This is much more like submarine versus submarine work that's happening in a deniable sphere, so that the rules are much very lightly enforced, because you can get away with anything they can't prove. It's not concentrated. It's happening everywhere. It's not kinetic. There's no border that you can defend and say, nope, no airplane is going to be allowed to go over from north of this line to south of that line because we have the ability to shoot them down if they do. These attacks are coming through networks that are in the ground or in the air or whatever, and so the traditional military approach to stopping them isn't working. And our objective here is that we don't have a defined objective that somehow we're going to end this so-called war. Rather, we would like some predictability so we know what our risks are so we can manage them. And we would like some equilibrium. We'd like to establish some line of scrimmage where we've got some of the field and they've got some of the field, and we at least are not living in constant fear all the time. Now, what I'll say, I'm running out of time, but what I'll say is this is really quite unusual. I, as a citizen of the United States, don't really have to fear the projection of force by a foreign nation-state adversary against my person or my property. I really can count on the U.S. military to make sure that no cruise missile comes out of the sky and lands on my house and destroys me and my family. That's a solved problem. On the other hand, they can project force in this sphere all day long, and not just toward me as an individual or as a public figure, but my companies or your companies, or we are all now at risk. So we're now talking about all of the tens of billions of investment dollars coming into the internet security field through Sand Hill Road and other investment regimes in order to solve a problem that everybody now has. Every company has to defend themselves against every nation state and against every criminal empire, both foreign and domestic. That's new. It used to be that nations existed to make sure that we didn't all have to solve that problem on our own. And so we are in the process now of redefining what it means to be a nation and why you might want to have one. And I don't think we were ready for that discussion. So we're down to our last 4 minutes. I'm going to skip this and just say, any questions?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Paul. And now I'm sure there come some questions from the audience. There's the first one.
Thank you. So about the source address validation, that Estonia actually does it. But another thing about it is that if you use the same ISP's IP address, then it still can be spoofed. So is there a cure also for that?
So I'm glad that Estonia does it. You're a model for the world, and I wish that you would trumpet your successes, both how little it cost and how much it benefited you, so that you might be able to create a wave. But yes, the granularity of the filtering directly affects its cost. So if you use egress filtering, in other words, where an internet service provider connects to the rest of the internet, to simply say any address that isn't part of my ISP cannot pass this line, then that will give some of your customers the ability to spoof the source address of others of your customers. That's a lot cheaper, however, than to give each customer their own filter. So yes, there is a very simple solution to the problem you've described, but it costs more. And given that we're already in an asymmetric situation where we have high cost and low benefit, that turns out to be a hard sell.
For the next question, please state your name and affiliation, please.
Yes, Fernando Maimi from the Army Cyber Institute at West Point. The proposals that you make are politically and economically unpalatable to many. And yet the work that you did to contain the effects of Configure demonstrate the potential for using a force of volunteers to solve problems. Can you think of any big internet problems we have that would benefit from a similar approach to being solved in the absence of policy or economic issues?
Yes, I can. So Dan Geer works for In-Q-Tel, gave a wonderful presentation as the keynote for Black Hat in Las Vegas earlier this year. And he made a series of proposals that would more or less call for a large number of volunteers in the style that you're describing. One of them is that if you are the provider of software and it's just normal commercial proprietary software and you wish to abandon it, you wish to say, sorry, no more bug fixes, that thing's dead. We'll give you a cheap upgrade path to something else. Dan Geer suggested that it might be a matter of national law or perhaps a trade policy that you would have to put it into open source as you abandoned it. Now I ask you to consider that we have still many tens of millions of Windows XP machines. A lot of them were pirated, so Microsoft was never paid for those licenses. It's not exactly in Microsoft's best interest to go on supporting Windows XP for the next 100 years in order to get those things to be a little bit more bug-free. So this might be a case where if Windows XP were placed in open source, that a large number of volunteers would be happy to go fix the problems with that. I don't think it would cut into any future revenue because Windows XP is a pig. So I think Microsoft could still sell Windows 10 in that world. But that would be an example of a solution along the lines you said. Last question.
There in the back.
Hi, Kenneth Gears from the NATO Cyber Center here. It sounds like you have both a deep technical understanding as well as an appreciation for military affairs. So I was wondering your thoughts and concerns on the militarization of cyberspace.
I am very concerned about the militarization of cyberspace because the internet is all commons. There is almost no attack that you can plan or execute that won't have deleterious side effects to innocent bystanders. I stood firm against a lot of the DDoS attacks that happened during the Occupy Wall Street movement on the basis that, you know, this is not civil disobedience. You're DDoSing PayPal, and there are a lot of people that would like to buy and sell things on PayPal who are not part of your movement, and they're not opposed to anything. They're ideologically aligned with you. And that would be an example of how it is that no matter what you do on the internet, it will probably have effects that you didn't know about, couldn't predict, don't intend, may even regret. And I think that is especially true for military action on the internet. So I am very concerned that this is not a solvable problem, but that we are going to move forward anyway.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, please also allow me a question as the last one maybe. So we learned in the early years we had IP, then we had the abstraction level of DNS to make things smoother. Now just having learned about the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, you see there is a need maybe in the nearer future for a new abstraction level on a higher level than DNS. Maybe this also helps us to defend the nation at the borderline.
Yes, and so we're constantly adding abstraction layers, both software and hardware. We virtualized the old thing that used to be real and then incorporated in the new thing. So we've already done what you said, which is the web. Yeah. So we have an entire naming system that uses the DNS as part of it, right? You can't have a web without DNS, but it expresses the location of objects in a much more semantic way. So I think the semantic web would be an example of what you're talking about. At least as far as being an overlay that is maybe more effective for this century than DNS. But I don't think it will help us with our border problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And also from us, as a token of appreciation, to take back home. Okay. So we will have a coffee break now, and we will meet again at 11 o'clock. In this room, room 1, we will have the panel, and in the second room, in room 2, we will have a session on artificial intelligence. Okay, thank you.